Hi everyone, Alex at Coram Farm. We are a year 4 Oklahoma flower farm that sells retail market bouquets from our roadside stand. And I am so excited about today's video because I think it might be, there's two most asked questions I get on our channel. The first question is, where do we get our steel buckets? And the second question is, can we do a video about farming with kids, farming with family? How do we incorporate it? And so I wanted to have this be a conversation instead of a lecture. And the best person I thought of to include was Ruth Ann from Abundant Blooms Flower Farm in Michigan. And her and I have very different farms, but we have very similar lives. And so I'll tell you a little bit about her and then I'll have her introduce herself. She sells wholesale and has 5 kids that she homeschools. And so between the two of us, we have 10 children. So I feel like we might not have it figured out, but we're at least qualified to talk about farming with children because that's what we do. So welcome, Ruth Ann.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your farm, how long you've been growing, where you grow, what you grow, all of those things so people can kind of get a flower farming profile about you.
Sure. So I'm in West Michigan. Like you said, I'm zone 6A now. We just moved from 5B. And I grow mostly woodies and perennials and annuals. So I just expanded into a bunch of woodies. So I have about an acre in production, but a good third of that acre is very immature woodies that I'm not harvesting off of that are not producing. And I sell direct to florists. This is my 6th year of flower farming. So I started in 2020. That was fun. And yeah, when I started, I had 3 kids, and so now I have 5. So I've had 2 babies, 2 pregnancies, 2 toddlers. Well, really 3, because when I started, my third was a toddler. So I've always farmed with small children, and then been pregnant. So now I have a 9-year-old. So I feel like I have a really old kid.
Yeah, so tell us about your primary sales outlet. Are you exclusively to florists now and you take your orders weekly and then do a couple deliveries a week and not doing any retail?
I don't do any retail. I've grown into that. I've done a little bit of retail over the years, but really, when I was pregnant with my 5th child, well, 2 summers ago, I was like, I'm not doing anything else except direct to florists or wholesale to florists. And I cut out all other little dabblings that I did. And I don't do any retail. The only thing I've done last year, I sold bulk buckets one time to like a retail person. So I might do that. I mean, I'm not like excluding that from possibilities in the future, but that's by no means, yeah, what I do. It's all direct to florists. I don't do any farmers markets. I don't do any roadside stand. I don't make bouquets ever. Like even if I sell bulk buckets, I will not be making bouquets. So I never make bouquets anymore. I used to. I don't do it anymore. So that's just, 10 stem bunches. That's all I do. I don't no, I don't mix anything.
You only think in quantities of 10 now. That's
I,
all that
yeah,
your brain does.
yeah. I don't make bouquets.
So what is the age spread of your kids? 9 down to
15 months.
15 months. Okay.
Mhm.
If you guys heard that, and for those of you that watch our channel, you heard that basically her operation is like the entire opposite of ours because you've heard me hate on perennials in Oklahoma on my channel because if you were to take Ruth Ann's farm and like copy and paste it into Oklahoma, it would be like the saddest, most unprofitable operation ever because Oklahoma does not do woodies and perennials that well, or at least in the way that it's lower labor for you, where you can plant and then generally keep it watered, weed free, and healthy. The labor that takes in Michigan is very different than Oklahoma, which is why we lean into just annuals and we have our annual fields and we are more of like a churn and burn retail operation. So it's very different, which I think will be interesting when we talk about a bit of like what our farming days look like with kids and what it looks like how you do florist deliveries, whereas like I technically would never have to leave my farm because of our roadside stand. And there's some pros and cons, struggles with either option. But again, if you guys are new to our channel, I will say that I have 5 kids and I was pregnant for the first time flower farming last year, which was year 3. And so heading into this year will be my first season selling with a baby because last year my youngest was 3, 4 years old. And so now I'm going to have a baby. And so I got to experience 11, well, 10 years old, 8 years old, 6 years old, 4 years old. And now I'm tacking on a baby, which I think will bring its own challenges that the older ones didn't. So I'm going to talk to you. I might even have some questions for you of what do I do with the baby stuff. But before we talk about our tips and our tricks and what our days look like and tactics and all of that, I kind of want to do a quick upfront disclaimer that no system or tips and tricks are going to be the end all solution and kind of get you out of the reality that parenting is hard. Parenting is hard work. And you're not going to hear us say, like, hand them an iPad and disappear for 3 hours, and that's how we farm, because that is not the best for the child and it's not going to work long term. And so I want to say that up front. I think we'll probably have some great tips and tricks to share, but if you're not actively viewing it as you need to parent your children, you're going to still end up really frustrated and it's going to be really hard. And maybe our tips won't even apply because I don't know about you, Ruth Ann, but I feel like I'm actively parenting them throughout the whole process. And it's not a stuff them in the corner so I can go do my own thing type experience.
Right. Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
And another thing I want to say too is, and I would like your thoughts on this, Ruth Ann, is for us convictionally, we're both Christians, and for Eric and I, the farm is something that we want to do, we enjoy doing, and it's a blessing in our life. But if we were to order our priorities, the farm is always going to come last to first our marriage and then our children. And having those priorities right is helpful in trying to navigate tricky times of the season and where you need to be spending your time, or if you're running into struggles in certain areas. Having set and fixed priorities makes it easy to find solutions. Then if I put my farm first, I'm going to have a lot more problems because my marriage will suffer and my children will suffer. And so locking those in up front actually makes it easier to problem solve when you have your priorities straight. So that's a little bit of my soapbox of what I think
Yeah.
is really important, especially as believers. Our marriage and children have to come before, our business endeavors.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely true for me as well. And and it changes and that looks different as time goes on and your children's stages and ages change. But yeah, we've always been committed to that. Like, how can we go on a date night? How can we stay connected? Or is this not working? And just constantly reevaluating that, I think, is really, really important. And I also do want to say, my husband has a full-time job. So the farm is not our sole income by any means, and it would not support our family solely the way it is now. So I'm a part-time flower farmer. My husband has a full-time job, has benefits, and that's so just to give the scope of that too.
Yeah, that's important to mention too, because
Mhm.
especially if you're farming with your husband and you're doing it full time together, you're making different considerations than what both of us have, which is part time. I think my husband, since you guys see him on the channel, Eric, all the time, is way more involved, I think, than your husband, but you have his support and blessing and probably his manual labor when he's
Yes.
able to.
Actually, he is pretty involved.
Okay.
He really dislikes ever being on social media or showing his face. So I conned him into actually my newest video that's going up is him trimming our woodies, and he was like kind of okay with that. So
So he's
he
like
is
a
actually pretty
secret
involved.
farmer. He's a
Yeah,
secret
he's the
farmer.
secret farmer. It wouldn't work without him. He like comes home from work and he's like, "What do you need me to do?" And he transplants sunflowers. He does not harvest. He does not. There's some things he really doesn't like doing, but he's very much, yes, he does a lot of manual labor, and he also does like, "I'll take all the kids so you can focus on this if you need to." So he's also very involved in that. And he starts pretty early, so he's a truck driver, so he's usually home between like 3 and 4 o'clock, but sometimes it can be like 6 or 7, depending on what happens. And I should say here in locally. He doesn't go over the road or anything. So very occasionally he would go to Chicago or something. But so anyway, but he starts pretty early. But so it is nice because he's home and we have daylight in the summer for a long time. So we're definitely out there working together. Um, and then on Saturday too. So, but
I
he
love
doesn't
that.
like to
That's super
see
fun.
his face.
Yeah. You reminded me though, I want to mention this too, is Ruth Ann started fairly recently a YouTube channel, which I fully support. I'll put the link in the comments because we are very different. And I've noticed so many of your videos would just be content I wouldn't create because I don't know it. Like you have great videos about your woodies and your perennials and selling to florists and, the harvest stage of certain things that florists are looking for. And so if you guys find yourself in that category, definitely follow her channel because she's going to be talking a lot to what you might be having, especially all you northern growers with your beautiful perennials. La la la. You're going to be the perennial girl on YouTube. I can feel it.
Yeah, yeah, it's been fun. I've definitely grown more into, perennials. I started almost all annuals, initially with, and then I put peonies in pretty soon. But yeah, so it's just been kind of how we've grown into that.
Awesome. So let's jump into some specifics here. On our Facebook group, I asked everyone for questions. And so that's what I'm looking down at. I have my notes here of getting a lay of the land of really the most common questions you guys have. And the first one I want to start with is I want both of us to kind of share what does a typical day look like for us with flower farming? And obviously it's different throughout the season. And so the day I'm thinking of is like active, like we're still homeschooling, so it's not summer yet, but we are in the season of planting, harvesting, selling. So it's kind of when all of the worlds converge and are happening at once. What does that typical day look like? What are the kids doing? What are your tasks? And maybe like a couple days, because a delivery day is going to look different for you than a harvesting day, that sort of thing. So why don't you start?
Okay, so I would just say I probably have less of those than you because my season starts significantly later than you, and I just put in a high tunnel this past August. Okay, so my season like that is, I think, much smaller than yours. Like, for example, you're starting to harvest tulips and mine haven't even broke ground. And I put in a high tunnel in August, so I'm hoping to have blooms by mid-April, which is a month before I've ever had blooms, as far as like the beginning of the season. Because our bulbs, I mean, we're hoping that our tulips hit Mother's Day. Sometimes they miss them by a week if it's too cold. And obviously, Mother's Day can kind of move a little bit. So, um, but for me, the trickiest time has been in the fall when I'm like full force harvesting and delivering and homeschooling in September. Because we try to like wrap up in the spring and do pretty minimal homeschooling, I would say, from like the busy springtime. So, but the fall, I'm always like, oh, it's so tricky when you're trying to balance all those things. It's definitely the trickiest thing. But for me, I also know, okay, I have like 7 weeks of this from September, till the middle of October. So I feel like, okay, I can keep going till the end. So, but for me, I try and homeschool in the morning and I'm up pretty early every day. I'm usually up by like 5:30, 6 o'clock. So I'm up before my kids and then I can do a few things and I get on my computer and do a few admin things that I need to. And then usually around 7 o'clock, I start homeschooling with my oldest child. So he's up and we like start doing math and get stuff done with him. And then kind of we take a break from 7 to 8, or I'm sorry, from 8 to 9. I'm like, we can't try and keep homeschooling here. And then everybody else is getting up and I get everybody fed and dressed and start the laundry. And then we kind of regroup and do homeschool from like 9 to 12. And I try as hard as I can. Like I leave my phone upstairs. We homeschool in the basement and I just try to have like no distractions. It's like full on homeschooling and that's really helpful because then you can just focus and then we're pretty much done by noon if we do that. And then the biggest thing is juggling like the toddler and the baby. And I just think it just depends on the stage and what's happening. But I'm always reevaluating that. But so anyway, that's kind of a little bit different topic. But so that's what I do to homeschool is I really focus on um the morning with the kids. And then thankfully by that time in the season, so if I was harvesting, like let's say it's September, instead of doing admin work at 6 o'clock, I would be out in the field by 6 a.m. if I needed to harvest. And I'd probably harvest from like 6 to 8. So then that day, like I might not be doing the homeschooling at 7 a.m. with my 9-year old. And then I would come in, and thankfully for me at those times of the year, it's cooler, so I can usually, have a little bit more wiggle room in when I'm harvesting, as opposed to like if it was the middle of the summer, I wouldn't really be able to harvest very well without harvesting all morning. So, yeah, so that's the trickiest part. And then Tuesdays I deliver. So Tuesday is kind of like the crazy day, because when I am homeschooling and delivering, it just like I end up homeschooling in the afternoon and just doing very like we're not doing anything extra for that day. Like we're just doing the basics. So that's what that would look like, I think. And then I just kind of work it around. Like it's very busy in the spring. Like right now we actually have a nice day. So, I could be out there prepping beds and direct seating and all that kind of stuff. So I just homeschool in the morning and then put the baby down and we go outside and have dinner. My husband comes home, and usually we pretty much often we'll just work till dinner and then feed everybody. And depending on, now we have daylight saving time, so it's lighter. But so sometimes after we put kids to bed, we will go back outside. But that kind of depends on the season too, because I feel like when you have a toddler and a baby, that's actually a nice time to go outside, and it's relaxing and you can get a lot done. But when I was pregnant with my fifth child, I never went outside after dinner. I went to bed. Like, no joke. Every night I was in bed by 8 o'clock all summer long. Like, there was nothing happening after 8 o'clock. I went to bed. And, but then last summer I was like, oh, this is actually really nice. The baby's down, the toddler's down, and like, you just kind of can go out there for an hour and get some stuff done. So, it's a lot of juggling when you're trying to homeschool and farm. That's definitely the trickiest. But like I said, I just feel like I know it's a short period of time, really, because then we get frost like mid-October and we're done for. So, and it really stops. So, and I plan it that way. Like, I don't do Christmas things. I don't want to do that because I'm homeschooling in the winter. So, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We have a lot in common with the time constraints with homeschool and having to juggle everything. I think the common thread that you poked out a lot that is so accurate is it's just a lot and it's really busy and you're always adapting. And so it's not going to be like I have office hours that are set with my farm and I work on the farm from 9 to 12 every day and then from 12 to bed. It's not set like that. It's like every day is its own adventure, and it's fitting the kid's schedule in to work with maybe like a task that has to be done on a particular day for the farm. And then there's other days where the farm gets, my third effort because other things are more important. You have a sick kid or you have something else going on. You have a birthday, you have things in life where you're like, I'll just figure out how to get those farm tasks done at some point in the week. And so you're constantly having to adjust what it looks like. And so if you're the personality that needs like locked in hours, you're probably going to be really frustrated with integrating kids with your farming because they're just not as, you can't jam them in to a set schedule. But so for
Girls
us,
don't have.
for us, it's fairly similar, except I'm kind of swapped. So we are pretty much winding down in the fall. So my crazy season is the spring. Like you said, this is March 14th, and I harvested our first tulips yesterday. And so I'm going to be like drinking from a fire hose through Mother's Day. And then we kind of get into a little more rhythmic, not as crazy sales with our summer flowers. And then we're done mid-July and I take 6 weeks off. And then we come back for like a really short, simple sunflowers and marigolds in the fall that is easy. Sunflowers are easy to harvest, all of that. And so for me, it's like I'm trying to not quit homeschool end of the year with spring. I'm trying to finish homeschool strong while also doing all the things. But it's very similar where I get up early as well. I think that's just one of the realities of being able to farm with kids is the amount of productivity you can have when you get up before your kids and you can get 90 minutes, 2 hours of things done before they wake up. And then you can pause farm things, come back in the house, be there for breakfast, get homeschool going, do that in the morning, and then come back out in the spring because the temperatures are not summer heat. So you can be doing a lot of tasks in the afternoon. And so I'm putting kids down for a nap or quiet time. We do a pretty strict quiet time where it's like everyone to your corners, do not interact, find an activity by yourself quietly in the house, and then I can leave and go do like an hour or two of afternoon things in the springtime. In the summer, we don't have homeschool, and I can't be outside in the summer or I will die of heat. So in the morning, I'm giving them activities. They're playing outside, they're running around, they're on our bounce house and swing set. Beautiful summer morning. And then we come in the afternoon and farm stuff is done, and we're doing all of that. And so, yeah, it's each day kind of looks different. I have found that it's helpful to either like Sunday evening or Monday morning, look at your week and kind of be scheduled and say, like, I have all of these required farm tasks. I have to plant out these plugs or I have to harvest blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to open the stand on Saturday. So I'm making bouquets Friday night. These are like the fixed have to get dones. And then do the same equivalent with your family. And then you can figure out how to like puzzle piece the things together for that particular week. And then you do it again the next week where things look different and you have different farm requirements. The kids have different things going on, all of that.
Yeah, I do that in the summer too. Like I pretty much try to be as kind of scheduled as possible. Like I harvest on this day and then Tuesday I deliver and then Wednesday. So there's sort of like daily tasks that have to happen for the farm, but they're also having the kids are in and out of all that too. So
Yeah, so that's a great segue into the next question I had written down is how do we utilize the kids on the farm? So both what are the kids doing when we're doing farm tasks and what are the farm tasks that we can include them in so they feel involved or they can be around and be helpful when you have like your helpful hand kids. Like you probably have some kids that could care less. You have other kids that want to help and you're like, how can I have you be helpful and not destructive? That sort of thing. So where are your kids sometimes, and then also where can they help?
right, so that's really age specific, obviously. I actually find babies really easy. Like if they're less than a year, they're just really easy to like contain and they're, not into everything. I wear my babies a lot. So like last summer, I was like wearing my baby while I was harvesting and everything if he was up and, wanted to be with me. Or I put a playpen out there. We have a fenced in area of our backyard where we have a place, swing set and a sandbox, and then we don't have any shades, so we built this structure to put a quick shade over or a sun sail over our sandbox, so we have like a little shady area. So I think making a spot for them where it's safe, like I can put my toddler inside the fence and lock the gates, and as long as my big kids don't open it and leave it open, you know, like there's a spot for like now my 15-month-old, he's everywhere. He's walking, he's into things, he wants to be outside. But if I put him in that spot and I lock the gates, he's very safe in there. He's got a sandbox, he's got things to keep him busy, and the other kids are in there. So it's a very safe spot for him, and he's in there, and I can see him from there. From most parts of my farm, not every single part, but if I'm in the hoop house, I'm almost right next to him. Or if I'm in our main field in the back, like I can see him, I can hear him. And so that's kind of what I really utilize. Like you got to have a sandbox. I don't know. Sandboxes are just like, you got to have something, right? Like all my kids have just loved a sandbox, and all my kids from, 15 months old to 10 all use the sandbox. So, excuse me. So I think just having something like that, like you have a bounce house, some kind of safe space for them. And then my big kids definitely help me. And you'd be surprised how helpful like a 5-year-old can be if they're motivated. And we do pay our kids to work on the farm. And so they're motivated by that. Some kids are more motivated than others. Hi, my child is banging on the house and waving to me. He's
Real life.
out in the yard.
I've got
Yep,
like mine wandering over here. That's why my eyes keep darting because I can
yeah,
see them
mine
wander.
too.
They're your
Anyway,
kids.
so yeah, there's a safe place. Okay, where was I? Hold on. Let's see. Oh, they can be really helpful. So
The older
I
ones, yeah.
used to transplant all my sunflowers. Now we have a paper pot transplanter, but I taught my oldest two kids to plant and transplant sunflowers. And we did it together, and I paid them, when they would do that work. But I mean, they were 6 and 7. My oldest two kids are 13 months apart. So like they're pretty capable. They were not that old. And I was like, wow, these kids can really transplant. So they're not going to work like that for 3 hours. But, we pretty much knew what needed to be done. I would put on an audiobook. We really loved books. And so I mean, I just like vividly remember listening to the Prairie Fire and Little House on the Prairie as we're transplanting sunflowers. Like, so we just kind of try to make it fun. And I don't always have a lot of energy to like make a game or something. So I don't feel like I'm the best at that. So utilize audiobooks or something like that to help pass the time and make it fun. So that's kind of something we definitely do is get a book and listen to it, and then that helps him work. Or my oldest son will be like, "Mom, can I listen to the audiobook and read this?" Like he wants to have audiobook time. And so he's like, trying to barter with me. Like, if you give me my phone and let me listen to this audiobook, I'll read this for you. So sometimes that works. So I would just say we bring them along as best we can. And I try to be really take it lightly, like hold things loosely, because the toddler is going to trample things. But honestly, plants are a lot more resistant than you think. If they're walking on a bed of just transplanted seedlings, most of them are going to be fine. So just like, it's mostly going to be okay. I've definitely lost whole trays of things as well to toddlers. So yeah, and then I also utilize boundaries like playpens and different things like that. And then my big kids, they're riding their bikes and they're just around me a lot. They're outside with me, they're around me and working with me. And so yeah, they will come along and work with me as well. But depending on their age, of course. But even like the little kids, because then you'll have a 3-year-old and they just want to work with you too. So I'll be like, here, put this Lysianthus plug here, and it slows you down. You're definitely not on the efficiency time frame there, but you're bringing them along and teaching them, and they feel included and they want to be with you. They just want to be near you. And so trying to incorporate them in any way you can, or having them water. I do that a lot because they don't really water in the right place, but it gives them a job and it's not really destructive. You're like, go water this, and they think it's fun and keeps them going. So,
Yeah, no, that's really good. That's a lot of it is similar to us. We pay our kids as well. Obviously, we have kids that are more motivated by the pay structure than others. But we also, I'll say part of the reason we have our flower farm is not because we need the income, but because we want it to be a tool and a lesson for our kids. And there's lots of different ways we utilize that. I mean, they get really excited on flower stand days and when we sell out and they see that and they get really excited with the success. But it's also a tool for us to give them tasks and to teach them hard work. And just even like, I can't even think of the right word. This is my postpartum brain. I just totally spaced. Also, we have 60-mile-an-hour gusts outside right now, so sometimes I'm like twitching because I'm hearing we have like a rainless like hurricane basically occurring outside right now. It's 60 to 70-mile-an-hour gusts, and so I'm like, maybe I'll just see my tunnel like go flying like Toto in the wind, Wizard of Oz style out the window. We're really testing the farmer's friend tunnels right now, you guys. Stamina is the word I was trying to think of. Like working hard, even when like you're tired or it's boring to you, or you would rather be playing a game, or it's just like, no, we're gonna like accomplish this task and we're gonna work hard. And for us, that typically happens on Saturdays. So during the week, they can kind of help as they want. And I can give them like odd jobs to do. Like I'll have my 9-year-old boy, he's my like chief bucket washer. I'll be like, grab all the buckets and wash them, get them dry, stack them, put them in the flower cottage. He gets paid for that. And that's a set task for him during the week. But other than that, I'm trying to do my own thing and harvest and do all the things. But on Saturday, they pretty much know from after breakfast until lunch, they're working on the farm. And that means they're either given specific tasks to do, or they just need to be what I would call like at elbow. Like they just need to be with us. And it's helpful to us because, Eric can be like, go run and get, this shovel, and it's an acre and a half away, and the kid can go run it, and that saves steps for us. and it's good for them, but it just gives them an opportunity to be invested in the farm. I think sometimes with kids, if you brush them off constantly and you're like, no, this is mommy's thing, no, go away, no, you're a nuisance, you're seeding a root of bitterness in your child's heart because they don't feel like they're part of it. And then that makes it harder when you do want to go do a farm task. They often can act out in their behavior, or it's like a root of frustration. And so trying to find ways to include them actually will make your life better. And like you said, things get trampled. Sometimes your efficiency tanks, but when they think of the flower farm, do they think of it as like mom and dad's thing that they just get annoyed with my presence? Or it's like, oh, mom's doing that task, but I know I can run up and ask her a question and then hop on my bike and go play. And, she's not going to get mad at me. I think that's an important thing to assess in how your kids are responding. Have you found that to be true with like how the kids process what it is you're doing with flower farming?
Yeah, yeah, I think that's true. And I have to check myself, like if I'm really I have a task that I feel like is really has a high priority and they're coming to me, I have to stop and address them and assess them and help them if they need to, because the reality is 3-year-olds have a lot of needs. They have a lot of needs, and so yeah, I think that that's important. And I liked what you were saying, how you have certain times for your kids that are known times, because kids really thrive on consistency and routine. So if they know that every Saturday, that was kind of like the sunflowers. Every Wednesday we planted sunflowers out, and that was like the first thing we did, is we didn't want it to be really hot. And so my kids knew like they were going to wake up literally and we were going to plant sunflowers. And it would take like 40 minutes. Like it wasn't, this monumental huge task, but they had to work hard to finish it. And then they were involved, yeah, with me. And yeah, I do feel like you don't want to just push them off, because then they're just going to think of it that way and they're not going to like the farm. And I want them to, I mean, it's not like I have this dream that they're going to take over the farm or something. That's not the case, but just to not think of it as like a bad thing, but as a thing that we do together and as a family, and teaching them. Um, yeah, I definitely feel the same way about that. Yeah.
That's a good point about consistent routine, because now my younger ones, my like now almost 7 and 5-year-old, on Saturday mornings, like they come downstairs in their little Carhartt overalls because they're like, it's work day, it's
Yeah.
Saturday. Like they know what's going to happen in their day. And like you said, that's probably calming to them to have that sort of consistency. And so specific tasks for me with my kids, since we do have them work the farm a lot. My daughter's my oldest, which is a mercy because I have a whole mess of boys after her. And so she's almost 11. And at this point, through training and patience, she can do pretty much every task on the farm.
Mm.
She can transplant plugs. She can build a new row with dad. She can open and close tunnels. She can harvest most things well. She started to make bouquets with me. So she's my like grab all, really competent helper. And then the next youngest, the 9-year-old boy, he's my bucket washer, but he also helps dad a lot. And he's usually like a runner. And we have him lift and carry things, and he'll help. He's actually very good at burning fabric rows. So he can, with the propane torch, we've taught him with the template, he can go through and burn the fabric, and he can do that. And so he has his tasks that he can do really well. My third is my like inside house cat. So he probably struggles the most with the outdoor stuff. He likes to be inside with his puzzles and books. He doesn't so much love the outdoor life like my other ones, but I try to at least give him like an hour or so of chores on that work Saturday, and then little things he can help with. And so this seems insignificant, but like this morning we had a bunch of plugs I need to start hardening off, and I needed to get all the trays onto the porch from the flower cottage, and there were like 12 trays. And I was like, 6-year-old, let's go. You're with me. You can carry a flat of plugs just fine. You can be involved. This segues nicely into the next thing I had. We talked a little bit about it, but I said, like, what boundaries do we set for the kids on the farm? Because on the one hand, I talked about how kids and your husband come before the farm, but also we're teaching our children to be respectful, to be responsible, to be maturing. And so that doesn't mean that they just get to be feral, chaotic animals in what you're trying to do. And so how have you set boundaries are there areas where they can't go, or have you just like taught them what you're doing? And so, they're not going to go like streaking across, your tunnel beds. Obviously, mistakes happen, but just a general view of the farm and what they can and can't do.
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think. So they're pretty much like allowed most places, but what we really try and do is teach our kids so we have very clear pathways and beds. And so I would say like from really little, I train them to like walk in the pathway, not on the bed, which takes some training yes, takes some training for like a 2 or 3 year old, but then they get it. Like now I have a 15-month-old. That's a hard boundary to really teach him. So like for that instance, I mostly keep him not in the garden. Like he's not really free. He's in the fence. But yeah, so I think that's like I try to really teach him young. Like this is the pathway, this is the bed. They're not allowed in my cooler ever. They're not allowed to play in the cooler. They're not play hide and seek in the cooler. They're never allowed in the cooler. They're not allowed to lock their brothers and sisters in the cooler. So that's
Yeah.
like a big boundary for me. Like when we got the cooler, I was like, no one may come in this cooler. I mean, unless I'm in there. But yeah, so that's definitely a big boundary. We just got this tunnel and I was just thinking like what boundaries that we need to place around it. So, yeah, they're not really allowed in there if I'm not in there, but it is kind of tricky because it's so tight and there's really not really much place to go without being in a flower bed or. So they will help me in there sometimes. But yeah, so that's something. But otherwise, like pretty much the farm, like our house is in the middle of our property and kind of our farm goes around it. So they're pretty much, I mean, they just can't go through the flower beds and they're big enough, most of them, that they know that. And yeah, but they just kind of I like so one rule that we have is like if I'm in the backyard, I want them in the backyard. Like right now, I can see them from my back window, so I told them they need to stay in the back of the house where I can see them. They can't be in the front. So those are kind of things that we've tried to implement. Like you have to be where I can see you. My older kids, like they can ride around the house on their bikes, but like the little ones have to be, or like now, like you have to be where I can see you so I know what's going on, particularly if you're less than 5. So those are kind of the boundaries. Yeah, I don't those are the ones I can think of that we implement. Like
Those are good ones. That's the same for us. And it kind of goes back to what I said about, there's not tips and tricks unless you're actively parenting. And we've also taught our kids this is where you walk and this is where you don't walk, especially like when you have silage tarps on and stuff. Like my kids know, like they're not just going to go streaking across the silage tarp or where our flower rows are, where they can walk. They also know that the farm is not like a general play area. Like if I'm actively doing something and they're around me, they can have toys and play. But like if I send them out to go play, they're not playing on the farm side. They have their swing set, they have their bikes in their area. So it's not an option to go just frolicking through the farm. And that helps mitigate damage of like a soccer ball going through the tunnel or whatever, because they have to do that elsewhere. And then the same as you, I ask them to be in areas where I can be aware. So like if I'm out working on the farm, they can't be inside the house doing whatever, because then I can't hear inside the house, if they left a faucet on or they did something dumb, I can't hear them. They need to be outside. And they have their areas that they can go. They can't go in our flower cottage ever, like you said about your cooler, and they can't open our cooler. It helps that our door is really hard to open with that, but there are some hard boundaries of this is not a play area and this is not an area you go unless I'm there, and we discipline that. And that also helps mitigate like problems or child losses, if you will, of them breaking something or doing something stupid. Like over the winter, they actually did get into the flower cottage and they left the door open. And so we were like heating the neighborhood for a while. And we were like, well, that was a discipline. And they learned a boundary there, and that was important. So when I say that kids and husband comes first, I don't mean that the kids don't have rules about learning to respect the farm and what you're trying to achieve, because that is part of the parenting and discipline that's good for the kids, is understanding what they can and can't do. You mentioned briefly, and this is going to be new for me this year, about what to do with toddlers and babies. We did get a lot of questions about that. I think we have a lot of younger moms. Well, I like to think that we're both young, but younger than us, with only like one or two kids of the little ages versus where we kind of have the whole spread with the 10 of ours of tips with pregnant. I can talk about pregnant stuff because I just did that and baby and toddlers and just kind of repeat a little bit about what you're doing with them. For me, pregnant last year, that was a challenge. But like you said, you did, you had breaks, you went to bed early and you didn't push it. And that's what I did as well. For baby, my plan for him, so he's 5 months right now, and you're fine. I'm just going to keep talking. Don't worry. He's 5 months now and we're just getting started in the season. I do have my daughter and my oldest son can be helpful in like watching him and stuff at times. But my plan is to get out one of our more ratty pack and plays and put that up with like a cover on it so that he's shaded and with some toys and stuff. And I can just have that and keep that over by the farm. And that could be like the farm pack and play and like pop him in it. So if I'm harvesting tulips for like 30, 40 minutes, he can be there. I'm not as much of a baby wearer because my babies tend to be absolutely ginormous. If you've seen their dad, they weigh so much and I am weak and I get tired really easily with some of the baby wearing. I think if I get desperate, I'll pop them on my back for some of that. But I'm hoping that like a pack and play. I do have like a bouncer in the cottage. So when I'm going to be making bouquets and doing things, I have a place to put him and he can watch me because he just wants to visually be around me. So that's my plan for babies, and he's not going to be one until our season's over. So year 5 for me will be my first like acute toddler farming year. But just kind of reiterate what you're going to do with your 15-month-old this season, where he's not as easy, put him on your back. He more wants to be free and unencumbered.
Oh yeah, and he wants to go outside. Man, he gets his boots and he like screams at the door. It's like I'm like, okay, yeah, we're gonna go outside. So yeah, so I don't do a lot of baby tons of baby wearing when they're that big. He's 30 pounds. He's over 30 pounds. He's not small. He's quite large. He's like wearing 2T clothes.
Ruth Ann, my 5-month-old is over 20 pounds.
My
He's
Daniel,
a baked potato.
yeah, I remember when he was 4 months old, he was 18 pounds.
So it's the same.
Yeah,
Just
they're pretty
giant
big, like off the
potatoes.
chart. Yeah. But my girls are not. My girls are more average. My boys are just really big. Like,
That makes
I don't know,
sense. Well, it's good.
pretty big.
Michigan Dutch boys,
Dutch,
like
yeah,
big
I
boys.
know. They're big. So, but anyway, so I don't tend to wear him like at this stage. Plus, he wouldn't be really happy. He wants to be on the go. So, yeah, again, I have a fenced-in backyard with a sandbox and a safe place for him. I mean, he's really like totally really safe in there. He fell down the deck stairs yesterday when I was standing right next to him. So, there's no like perfect safety, but you know, he was fine. But you're like that was an instance I was literally right next to him and he does stairs fine and he fell down them. They're not a full flight of stairs, but like you can't, even if you're literally right there, you're never going to be perfectly safe. But so yeah, so he goes in safe places, like or in the stroller. I find strollers can be a really great place, but yeah, I definitely did all the things: pack and play, exerciser, strollers. You just kind of like move from one to the next
You
with
can give them a
snack,
snack. You can
yeah,
snack in the stroller.
snack like in their little cup, some
Where they
veggie
have to dig
straws.
their little
Yep, they
fists in
gotta,
it.
that keeps them occupied. Um, and I'm trying to think what else. Like it just is creativity and like playing games with them. Because yeah, they cannot be very often free and just they're gonna they're not gonna be safe. They're gonna get into things. Like we have a road, like we live on a not a super busy road, but a very fast road, and our house is set back from the road. But yeah, they get to the road, so I'm pretty like my 3-year-old and my toddler, they have to be contained. Maybe not the 3-year-old as much, but she has to be where I can see her, and the baby has to be like absolutely contained to be safe or to be like, yeah, to be safe, and I have to be able to hear them. So yeah, snacks. Um, bound, some kind of containment, all any way you can. And then sometimes I do like my older kids will help with him for sure. They will watch him. Um, but I've always wanted to say this. So if you're a mom to only children less than 5, like that's really hard. It's just hard. So just embrace that it's really hard. My life is easier with 5 children now that I have 3 older children than it was when my oldest 3 were only tiny. There's only 34 months between my oldest 3 kids. They're very close in age. And and that was really intense time of life.
I'm glad
It
you
just
said that because
really
I
hard.
agree. I agree. Having five now is easier than when I had three, and mine were 3 years old and under. They were really
Yeah.
close together. That was
Yeah.
a much harder time because they all need you and they're not as
Yes.
independent. They're more dangerous to themselves than others. It's hard. I'm glad you said that because it's hard.
Yeah.
And one thing you mentioned about with your husband too, that and this requires communication and scheduling your week. I use this as well, and I think you do. It's perfectly acceptable to talk to your husband and be like, "Hey, I have this big task I really need to get done. Can you have the kids after we have dinner together and I go out for a couple hours or an hour and I get this done? Can you watch the kids or can you be out there with us, but like you be primary fire putter outer with the kids to get a task done. I wouldn't base your whole farm plan around like husband having kids, but there are definitely times in the season where I'm just like, hey, after we have dinner, like I need to go out and get these tulips I didn't get to because blah, 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 drama happened with the kids. I didn't get it done. Can you watch the kids? I just need to go get this done for an hour. I can move way faster with an hour uninterrupted than with the kids. And that's just what we do. And it's a communication thing with Eric of what we need to get done. That's totally something you can utilize.
Yeah, I absolutely do that. My husband is really really helpful. Like he definitely that's just something, yeah, we have to communicate. So like a marriage tip, I guess. We started doing this several years ago. We went to a marriage conference and this was like a little gem that we gleaned from it. I don't remember what they called it, but they basically said when you're face to face with your spouse, like after the end of a day when they've been working, just have like a 3 minute, you each get 3 minutes. We call it our 3 on 3. So my husband gets home, he says hi to our kids, and then we literally set a timer and we talk. And so I talk for 3 minutes and he talks for 3 minutes. It's not like we're going to discuss and solve like some major problem or we're going to make a big decision. It's just like a touch point where we communicate with each other very intentionally what happened, what needs to happen. Was there something with the kid that needs to be communicated? Was there something funny? Was there, it's just a touch point. And sometimes it's 10 minutes, but it's really very short. We keep it very precise. And that's just like a touch point for us. And it's been really helpful in our marriage. And we've done it for years now. And it seems like not this big thing, and it's just really helped in communicating, and it helps us. So that's like a touch point for us that we do pretty much every day.
I
And
think
that's
that's
helpful.
really wise too, because then the other person is less likely to feel like you're putting them on the spot. They know what need you have, or it's coming like for me with Eric, like I try to give him as big of a heads up as I can, whether it's like on his way, before he ends the day or whatever. I'm not just like waiting until end of dinner and being like, hey, gotta go, bye, see you in an hour. And he's just like, what? Like I wanted, in his mind, he was like, well, I needed to get this, and this done. We try
Mhm.
to plan these things out, or at least a heads up so that we're not I don't know. Again, with I'm very sensitive to you need to put your marriage first over the flower farm. And so to do that, you can be tactful in how you ask your husband for help and you schedule it so that you're respectful of him and his time, or he worked a full day and he's tired, those sorts of things. You need to have it mesh with your life, marriage, and kids and not have them be the afterthought to the farm tasks that you need to get done. And quite frankly, sometimes farm things don't get done. And
Mhm.
that's part of it. It's not my full-time job and I don't have set office hours. And so if a kid gets a fever or, Eric had something that he needs to get done in the evening and I can't get away to do something, I figure it out the next day and I don't make it a fight. I don't make it a stressor. I don't become like a rain cloud in my home because I'm mad that everyone's getting in the way of my flower farm dream. I fit it in a way that keeps everyone joyful. And I think that's the best way to be sustainable because if everyone just builds up a frustration and bitterness, it's actually unlikely that you will probably continue to farm. And so it's worth it to think about those things.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But yeah, I think communication, it's funny. I talk a lot about selling to florists, and this is like a huge thing is communicating. Well, in any relationship, communicating is like the most important thing. Communicating with my kids, how to do a job well, communicating with my husband, what the expectation is or what his expectation is, like listening to what he wants or needs. Or my husband's a big runner. He loves to run, and he's pretty much a rock star. He will take all five of our children and run down the country roads with them. And he puts two kids in the stroller. We have a like a really good jogging stroller that we've had. It's actually amazing, and it's like 9 years old. I can't believe it still is as amazing as it is. And I mean, there must be thousands of miles on it. And he runs, and the kids bike, and so he enjoys that a lot. And so but it gives me like space to do something, and he's happy to come home from work and get all five kids and go for a run. And he would do this when they were all tiny, and none of them could bike. And he hitched up a bike trailer to the back of our double stroller and pushed all three kids while he ran.
I love that.
He was a Marine, if you want to know.
There we
He
go.
was,
Now we have the answer. It's like his
he
own
still is a
ruck.
Marine,
It's like
right?
a kid ruck. Let's
Yeah.
go.
So he's like, how can I run more? I'll just take all these kids.
Perfect. Exactly. Yeah, you just get it done. Like if you learn to just do life with the kids around you, it actually makes you more productive because you're having to fight less of where do I put them? What do I have them do? And it's so much mental of just like, they're my children. They're going to be around me. They want to be around me. Let's figure out how to do this all together instead of constantly trying to like stuff them in places so they're away so you can do your task. That to
Yeah.
me was really helpful and just like they're going to be around and I'm
Yeah.
going to get I'm
Yeah.
going to get it done.
And I
Yeah.
also have like they have certain snacks they can always have. Like my big kids can get their own snack. Like they have things they know that they can always have if they're hungry or if they need something. And yeah, so there's definitely that too. Just like having things set up for success
That's good because
forever.
it's also a trained independence also because you also if your kid is so needy that they can't function unless you're actively entertaining them and they're 5 years old, that's something that you can parent better because a 5-year-old should be able to do something with a sibling for 30 minutes without, mom's locked on entertaining
Yeah.
them or providing it for them. So let's talk a little bit here at the end, a bit for us for those that homeschool, just talk a little bit again about like where does homeschool fit in? Are we more seasonal with it? Are we year-long homeschoolers? How do we work that in? Like you said, spring is crazy for me, fall is crazy for you because it all kind of converges at once for a little while. But yeah, how do we homeschool? So that means our kids are home all the time. We don't have put them on the bus and then we flower farm reality.
No, yeah, there's a lot of like we are all together. Like it's a lot of food, it's a lot of, it's a lot and it's a lot of like mom is always on. Like my sister and I want to go do this little errand and it's like I have to work really, really hard to make that happen so I can go do this thing with my sister for 2 hours because I can't really take all my kids with me. Realistically, that's not gonna work, right? So it is definitely a lot of juggling, and my kids really, yeah, go with me everywhere. And that's just like we're just. And I earlier in the interview or the talk, you said something about adventure, and that's what I've always said to people. Anybody that like sees me in the grocery store, like say, "Oh, you have your hands full" or something, and I just say it's just an everyday adventure, and and that's kind of how I look at it because it is like there's just you never know what's going to happen if you're going to be up all night with a kid or that. So you just kind of have to hold it that way. And that's how I look at the homeschooling. Like we try to work hard at homeschooling and get that done and just Yeah, I don't know. We just work it in. And then I teach my kids to work too. So like household management things, like my children clear and set the table. My older kids do their own laundry. Um, my daughter, my 8-year-old daughter is actually really good at it. She does her laundry. They can sw even my 6-year-old son, like they can't even get the clothes out of the washer, but they get stools and they like take two kids and they get the clothes out of the wash machine and put it into the dryer and they work together. And so, and then like for cleaning, we have routines that we do weekly to keep things, going. And I think that's the same with homeschooling. Yep, they're all with me all the time, and it can be overwhelming. Like I get overwhelmed. Like this is not like perfect and everything is wonderful. Like I get overwhelmed with my children, and it's not like I have some
Oh, hold
um
on. Eric's calling me, which is weird.
oh,
Yeah. Okay, so the Lord is laughing because he's like, you guys going to film a video about farming with family, and I'm going to make this the most chaotic video possible. So our silage was blowing away to like the next county. It got loose. And so Eric was like, grab every kid you can and run out here. And so we pinned the kids down on the silage tarp until we could get sandbags to pin it down because of the wind gusts. So I got like hit in the face. I'm like covered in mud. So that's farming with kids and
they can
trying to,
be very helpful.
yeah, they were sandbags. There were 4 kid sandbags out there for a while. We got it pinned down, but here, we'll wrap it up at the end. I'm glad you stuck with me because I didn't want to quit here because I did want to wrap up talking about, we had a couple more remaining questions and it was, how do we fit in like chores and meals on top of like homeschooling and flower farming? I heard you like pick up it on it a bit, but like think about your busiest season when like everything converges. How are you getting chores done throughout the week? And then also, like you said, we have 7 mouths to feed every day. So
Yeah, we eat a lot of food. I'm sure you guys do too. But like we literally, like I will make a 2 pound of meat, big 9 by 13 casserole, and it's gone. And my kids are like, "Where do you have no more food, Mom?"
correct.
It's an
Correct.
intense, it's an intense amount of food. Like it just is. So here's I have a couple of tricks.
It's like when recipes online say like serves 4 to 6, and I'm like,
That's
well,
cute.
that's cute. Like that's not even everyone. And I'd also like to have some leftovers for like feeding someone at some other time. So anyways,
Yeah, that's cute. I'm like, uh-huh. I was once standing in the line at our meat store with like two 10-pound tubes of fresh hamburger, which is not even that much. And this lady was like, "What are you gonna do with all that?" I was like, "Oh, I'll have it all taken care of by tonight. Like, it's gonna make this many, I'm gonna cook this much into sloppy joes, and I'm gonna like, it's not that hard for me to take care of 20 pounds of hamburger at all." So
no,
I do. So here's a couple of tricks that I do. First of all, in the winter. I kind of think of everything as seasonal. So in the winter, I do certain things that I don't do in the summer. I don't like take on a painting project in July. Like if I want to repaint a bedroom, it's got to be in the winter. So those kinds of things, just like seasonal, just like unless it's has to be done in the summer because you have to paint the deck because I can't do that in the winter. Like I will not do a job like that in the summer. It has to be in the winter. So just kind of like thinking of tasks seasonally, but feeding people is not seasonal. So what I do is I try to have 20 freezer meals in my freezer. In the winter, I make them and I put them in the freezer. I currently have 15, so I'm hoping I get to my 20, but I'm pretty close. So I have those in the freezer for my busy summer season. I'm not homeschooling during that time, but I do like to be able to just like really have quick food, and that's one way. And I do definitely save some of those for September. So my goal is to have like one meal a week from the freezer. That's like a big 9 by 13 casserole. That might just be that might just be the meat. Like I cooked up 2 turkeys and I put 3 big bags of turkey and gravy in the freezer for the winter because that's like my meat and we have vegetables and I can get vegetables. I can easily add to that, but I have like a starting point. And then from there, we eat very the same food, very simple, the same food. I do all of our cooking basically from scratch. So, but like Every Tuesday in the summer, we have tacos. Every Friday night, we have pizza. And then we have that freezer meal. So that's 3 meals. We typically have a breakfast for dinner. So some kind of an egg, something. Um, and then we do like grilled meat a lot, like probably twice a week, grilled meat. And then, we kind of fit in, maybe have a meal of leftovers. Like that's 7 meals. That's like what we eat all summer long. Like that is literally how simple it is because I can't manage anything more than that. I just can't do any more than that, but everybody has to eat. And then I make all of our own bread and I have a bread machine, but my 8-year-old daughter does that now, so she does a lot of the bread.
Nice.
And like and if that doesn't work for your season of life, like when I was pregnant with my fifth child 2 summers ago, we ate frozen pizza because I couldn't make homemade pizza every Friday night. But now my oldest two kids can pretty much make it by themselves. So it's not a big deal to make homemade pizza now. But in that season of life, we bought pizzas from Aldi and we had frozen pizza. And that's okay for a season of life too. So it definitely takes into consideration what is happening at that time frame of your family, and that's okay. So that's definitely something that I do. So, and then yeah, we make all of our own bread. So we have bread for lunch. I mean, we eat sandwiches for breakfast. We like for or sandwiches for lunch, and fruit and a piece of cheese. Like we pretty much eat the same food. Just like I don't make it super complicated. And then in the winter, I make a little bit different meals. Like I try to make these casseroles, and when I make a 9 by 13 casserole, I make three, and I put two in the freezer. And I make up like 8 pounds of hamburger meat. I cook 8 pounds of hamburger meat in my Instapot or my crock pot. And then we have tacos and I separate it out into 2 pound sections and I put those three in the freezer. So I'm never cooking just one thing. Like I'm cooking for the next many meals. And I do that all year round. But then in the summer, I have things ready to go. So I try to do things like that. And like my husband picks up all of our groceries. I put in the order. We don't live close enough to town to get delivery, but he drives or he can easily drive by an Aldi on the way home from work. So I put in orders on Instacart and he picks them up. Like that's our system. Again, that is something we do year round, but that really helps me as a homeschool mom to not have to take all five of my children to the grocery store, which is a pretty big endeavor every week, to have to do that. So that saves me a lot of time. So that's again like working with your husband, and my husband is he's super happy to help out in that way. Like if I like gave him a list, he would go to the grocery store. But this just makes it a lot easier to like order it. So there's stuff like that. Or we do go to Costco sometimes, and then in the summer, sometimes I just feel like I can't. So I'll order what I can and have Costco deliver it, which isn't I don't love that, but sometimes that's what you have to do to get through the busy seasons when you're pregnant, when you have little ones, when you're just crazy busy in those 6 weeks in September to the middle of October, or for you in the spring. Those are some things that I do, and then I just keep it simple. And we eat leftovers. We eat a lot of the same meals on, like on a 2-week rotating basis. It's simple. It's simple. Like I feel like you just have to make it simple. Sort of like farming. Like how do you be a profitable farmer? You keep it as simple as possible. You don't grow 70 different things. You grow 15 different things and you repeat them. It's the same idea. You just do it with your food. So,
No, I love that. That's so true. Yeah, those are also really good how tips, but also like the principles were really good. And so some of the key points were you're planning purposefully. Like if your concept of meal planning is like at 3:30 being like, what should we make for dinner? Like that's never going to work well, especially in the season. And so even if that morning you decide what you're going to make, it helps you prepare. And so like you're just going to have to meal plan and not wing it to help yourself.
Mhm.
And then like you do with simplifying, it's like you should know the meals that you can make in like less than an hour or in 30 minutes, or you can use your Instapot, or you can pull it. You could make it in the morning and put the dish in, in the afternoon, you pull it out and bake it because you're going to be busy in the field that afternoon. And so you can't pre-prep. So you're going to do it in the morning. It's like you have to plan, you have to schedule. You can't wing it. But also you can find kind of like the hacks to make it easier. Like you said, you put in the order for your husband and he picks it up. For us, since Eric works from home, he bought us the Walmart Plus subscription, so we get free delivery. And so I don't go to the grocery store anymore. That's how
Hmm.
I meal plan really easy. I have my planner, I have my binder of our favorite recipes. I put in the order, it's delivered. And that's how I can stay on top of things. I'm not having to go to the grocery store, which is like a 90-minute plus round trip with the whole crew. That saves me a lot of time and also just energy and stress because love my kids, but like 90 minutes in Walmart is an adventure and I don't need to go through that, 2 or 3 times a week. And so we do that. And then also I came to terms with the reality of something that's really easy for our family and we budget for it is because Saturdays are like our crazy days. Like I'm up at 5 a.m. before the flower stand. We're doing the sales and then we're working all day. We go out to dinner Saturday nights. It could be like barbecue, it could be the Mexican place down the road. It can just be really simple. We go to our favorite like burger place, fast food. We go out to eat on Saturday. And it's just like that day is so full for me. It is just really hard to get a meal on the table, timing wise, energy wise. So we just go out to eat. That's not every Saturday the whole year. It's seasonal, like you said. It's probably like for us, it's probably going to be like end of March through June, and then it'll be fine again. And then probably like in November when it's like crazy planting and there's a lot going on, that'll be our Saturday outs. Another thing with chores and what you said about especially your girls and stuff, for those of the young moms that have your little ones, now is the time to be working on them to teach them all of these things because your kids don't just wake up at 8 years old and know how to make bread. Like you are obviously including them and teaching them or with the laundry and stuff. And so being purposeful in your parenting and teaching them these skills grows them into independence. And then that makes your life easier as they get older. And so again, with that element of parenting is like you can teach your kids into making life a little easier.
And it takes a lot of work. Like sometimes even now, like a couple nights ago, I was like, where'd everybody go? Nobody cleared a single thing from the table. Like it definitely is like, okay, like let's all come back here and clear the table and wipe the table.
Yeah, they're not robots.
No, right? And I have to remind myself of that too. And it's certainly not perfect. And it's a lot of, I also want to say I do not have like a 100% high perfection standard of like my ceiling fans could be dusted and my baseboards probably could be cleaned. But I'm okay with that because I'd rather farm than have an immaculately clean house. So,
Right.
I
And
mean, it's
like
not
you
a
said,
big bed.
seasonally, my home looks different in the summer than it does like
Yes.
in January when I'm not doing anything but like
Yes.
homeschooling and painting rooms and doing those projects that are like indoor life project. In July, it's like we live outside and we traipse inside to like get something to drink and go to bed.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah. I would
home
definitely, yeah, say the same. So and I think with 5 kids, you have to be kind of okay with some level of just life. Like I wouldn't have enough hours in the day to like go around and pick up after all my children. Like you have to train them and it's going to be messy. And you also have to like I was kind of just the other day I was like this kitchen is a wreck. Well, yeah, my I called my big 3 kids and within 15 minutes it was like 90% better. So there's just like okay, it's a mess because we ate lunch and breakfast and this is life with 5, 6 people in the home, but we all come together and we clean it up. So just kind of embracing like it's a mess right now, but we're gonna clean this up after lunch or
We're
after
not
dinner.
like in-home interior designer influencers on
No,
Instagram with like a clear countertop at 2 p.m. in the afternoon.
right. Yeah.
Life
So
is happening.
yeah.
Well, so to conclude here, what are your general meta 30,000 foot view thoughts on just farming with kids, farming with family, having them around, all of that?
I like to, well, like the one thing, it's an everyday adventure. And then I also try to remind myself, like, I'm their mother. Like, I'm their only mother. So, what kind of a mother do I want to be? I think I heard Jennifer Pepito. Do you know her? recently say like your child's childhood is your motherhood, and
Mhm.
just like remembering that you're the mom, and like how do you want your children to remember you? Do you want them to remember you as like super frustrated and always like we got to do this, or just more calm and relaxed? And I'm not perfect at that by any means, just ask my children. But I do think it's just kind of like the grace of like being together and repenting and rejoicing and repeating and keep going, even when it's tough relationally, and putting in the effort with your children, even if it's just something really simple like um when I put my baby down for a nap, I'm gonna sing one.
The door just slammed and it scared the life out of me.
I was like, just something blow away.
The door slammed. One of the boys slammed the doors.
Oh, probably the wind took it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just like this is I don't know, like stepping heavenward. Like we're just on this journey and it's not perfect, and we all need to repent and rejoice and repeat and keep loving each other and being really flexible. Like I think there is just an element of that you have to be flexible. During tulip season last year, my kids got strep throat, and like my 6-year-old was so sick. I've never seen him so sick. Like it just like encompassed my whole world. And it had to. Like he was very ill, and I had all these kids vomiting in the night. I mean, it was a disaster. Like it just was. And it's nobody's fault. Like nobody was doing something wrong. And so you just kind of have to really have this flexibility too of like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. Call, get it. He's like, and calling for help. Like, it's okay to call for help. Like, my parents do live here. My in-laws don't, but like, I do have my parents here. They do travel some, and they have a lot of other responsibilities, but they definitely do help us for sure. So, like, I have my parents and other, people if you need help. Like, I think you just have to be able to be like, okay, or if somebody offers to bring you a meal because your family's been really sick, just say yes. Just say yes.
Yes. No, I like,
Yes.
I agree with all of that. And the thing I would add on top of that for us, that's really important. We've talked a little bit about this on our channel, is the importance of Sabbath for us and rest. And our flower farm is not 7 days a week. It is 6 days a week. And Sunday, we are not doing work on the farm. We're not talking about the farm. The kids are not having to do stuff on the farm. It is, we go to church and we have family time and we have a wonderful dinner together. And it's not always go, go, go with the farm and the scheduling and doing stuff. And I think that also is just a really healthy pace for our bodies and our mental mindset. It's a blessing to the kids because they're not always in like that business mode with flowers and harvesting and doing all that kind of thing. And so scheduling in that day where it's like we're not going to be doing flower farming stuff is a
Hmm.
wonderful reset. Also, because it happens on Sunday, then we launch into Monday and our new week and all of that after a day of rest has been really valuable. And for Eric and I in our marriage and with flower farming, we also have been purposeful about if we do go out to the farm on Sunday, we're not making a to-do list or complaining about the issues we see or talking business stuff. We try, sometimes fail, to just enjoy it and to just be like, look how beautiful this looks. Look at what we're building. Take a walk together and not be in like business mode all the time. And by working really hard 6 days a week, it also makes it possible to just really push yourself and work hard because rest is coming. And that's been, I think, really valuable to our success with our family and our marriage of not getting burned out. Because all of this you can burn out so quickly if you're not being mindful of all of these things. But thank you, Ruth Ann, for joining us. I hope this was helpful, you guys. If you want us to do like a part two, if there's stuff we didn't cover, or if you want it to be to keep talking about these subjects, let us know in the comments. But please follow her channel. I will link it below, especially those of you that grow in a different climate than Oklahoma, or you're curious about selling wholesale, or you have a lot of perennials and woodies. She is a great teacher, and she's been doing it longer than I have. She's at 6 years, so she's beat me there. But thank you for your time. At the end of our videos, you did this in your latest video, and you said it worked too. But
Hmm.
if you made it this far through all of our real life and chaos and interruptions in this video, the emoji, I think it should be an iteration of one of like the families. Like, do
Hmm.
you have a whole mess of kids with your husband? Is it just you and your husband? Which like emoji of the family and people and put that in the comments. I think that would be interesting.
That's great. Are you pregnant? Yeah.
Yeah, well, good. Yeah, you could do the pregnant one,
Have
or
a
you could do like
baby.
the pregnant one with like two baby heads or whatever.
Yep,
I
yep.
like
That's perfect.
that. Okay. So identify yourself and status by people emojis in the comments.
That's great. Well, thanks so much, Alex. I really appreciate coming on here. This has been really fun. It's always fun to talk motherhood and farming and family life. So thanks for having
Awesome.
me.
Thanks, guys. See you in the next video.